Good afternoon. My name is Kathryn Kunert, and I'm the group publisher of Business Publications Corporation. I'd like to welcome you and also introduce my co-moderator for today's session, Susanna DeBaca, who's the president and CEO of BPC. Welcome, Susanna.
Good morning.
Before we begin, we are in a meeting style today, which means you can be seen. If you'd like to be off camera, you may choose to do that as well during our program portion of the event. But later on, we are going to ask you to be on screen during the interactive portion of the program. And we do encourage you to stay around for that. Some people get a little bit shy to meet new people, but I promise it's one of the best parts of the program. We'd love to have you stick around for that portion. All right, Envision Iowa, what is it? Envision Iowa is an initiative that was created by BPC in 2021 to help Iowa thrive and grow. The initiative was so well received that we're back here for our third year, wrapping up the third of our think tanks today. It also includes an in-person event, which is going to be on October 4th, and we'll be unveiling the second Envision Iowa statewide Leaders Economic Outlook Survey, which is done in partnership with local consulting firm Baton Global, who you'll be able to hear a little sneak peek from later today. You're also going to be getting an opportunity to see the full report at the October event. So mark your calendar. That is October 4th. We'll have some more information on it in a little bit. Ultimately, the goal of Envision Iowa is to strengthen Iowa's businesses and communities through strategic connections, powerful storytelling, and amplifying the message of Iowa, which we believe is going to help lead to collaboration and, more importantly, action. Susanna is going to give you a little preview of what to expect today.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. And hello, everybody. Welcome. As Chris mentioned, Envision Iowa has three components. The first is the think tanks. Today, as he mentioned, is our third and final think tank of 2023. If you're here, that probably means that you are a reader of Business Publications Corporation products, so thank you. Or it means that you're a thought leader from the business, economic development, or chamber community who is interested in advancing Iowa. The second component of Envision Iowa is the in-person event or the public event. On October 24th, as Chris mentioned, we're going to get together again for this public event that will help amplify the discussion and the topics that we've been discussing here at the think tanks to a wider statewide audience. The public event is going to be held from 4 to 6 p.m. in person at the West Des Moines Hilton Garden Inn, and it's being sponsored by the Iowa Economic Development Authority, the Iowa Business Council, Des Moines International Airport Authority, and the Iowa Credit Union League. We welcome all of you think tank attendees to register. You can do that at businessrecord.com/Envision Iowa, but bring your friends. We'd love to see you in the room for this discussion. The third component of Envision Iowa is coverage in our products. Our goal is to ensure that we're covering and infusing statewide economic development coverage into the Business Record, into DSM and IA magazines. So our mandate here is to highlight stories of the interesting, innovative, or unique places and spaces and ideas that are happening right here in Iowa. We want to elevate key economic development conversations. So stay tuned and look at all of the coverage in our products, which will not only reflect some of the conversations we're having here, but introduce you to stories. Chris?
All right, today's session, we're going to be focusing on infrastructure and the need to support our state and transportation, broadband, access to housing, childcare, healthcare, and more. So when we talk about infrastructure, we're not just talking about physical projects, but we're talking about the things that help put a great structure in place for us to be able to do business and have thriving communities. We're going to be moving pretty fast today, and we're going to be providing you with information from our speakers, our research partners, and also a panel. We're also going to have an opportunity for you to interact with your fellow attendees. So here's what's going to happen. First, we're going to kick things off with a keynote between Susanna and Joe Murphy, the CEO of the Iowa Business Council. After hearing from Joe, we're going to have a brief panel discussion with some top statewide leaders on our theme of infrastructure. Then we're going to go into a breakout session where you can meet others from across the state. You'll be in there for about 10 to 15 minutes or so you have an opportunity to interact with them and get to meet people and make connections all across the state. And after that, we're going to bring everybody back, and we're delighted to welcome Baton Global, who's going to give us a preliminary look at some infrastructure-related results from the Envision Iowa Statewide Economic Outlook Survey. When we come back, we'll wrap things up, have a little bit of feedback, and send you on our way. Ultimately, what can you expect to get out of these think tanks? As a media company, we feel our role is to help be a convener that brings together statewide economic development, chamber and business leaders, so that we can ask questions, spur discussion, and to get you as leaders together so you can take the ideas and connections and continue to advance our state. What we hope you'll get is the opportunity to listen to experts, hear some research, and connect and share ideas around these key themes. So let's go ahead and get things started. We've got a great group from across the state. And so a little housekeeping for our facilitators, and you know who you are. If you would, please change your name and put an FAC in front. That will make it a little bit easier for me when I'm doing all the puppeting on the back end to make sure we get all the rooms set up. Susanna, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, excellent. I invite all of you to tell us a little bit more about yourselves, where you're from. So if you want to, in the chat, let us know your name, your title, and company. It's just kind of fun to see who's in the room. So I will go ahead and dive into the program, and I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Joe Murphy. Joe is the president and board secretary of the Iowa Business Council. In this role, he leads an organization that is comprised of CEOs and top executives from 21 of the largest employers here in the state of Iowa. The Iowa Business Council serves as a catalyst to elevate Iowa's long-term economic viability through global thought leadership, research, and advocacy. So I think many of you know Joe, but he has over a decade of experience in governmental affairs, political advocacy, and public relations, both in the public and the private sector. And prior to this role, Joe was the Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Public Policy at the Greater Des Moines Partnership. He has a BA in economics from UNI and a master's degree in public administration from Drake. So he's lived all over the state. He's very active in our community, serving on a number of different boards of directors. Now he lives right here in central Iowa, and he is a dad of 3, including twins. So welcome, Joe. I always have to mention the twins.
Hello, thank you. The twins get a lot of love. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, we're glad school started, and it might mean it's a little quieter around your house and everyone on the lines as well. So we were excited to have Joe here to talk about infrastructure, in part because he is working with these large employers and gets a very good sort of statewide view of how these issues affect our large employers in the state of Iowa. So Joe, a lot has changed since we started this initiative in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. So before we really dive into opportunities or solutions, can you just maybe help us level set a little bit? What do you think are some key facts or statistics that you'd offer our audience on how we're actually doing here in Iowa in terms of infrastructure?
Well, I think there's been a lot of progress that have been made on the infrastructure side. You know, I think about, hard assets or physical assets that have been, that we've been investing in both as a state through our state public policy, our federal public policy at the congressional level, but then also from a private business or private sector aspect of, well, we've made a lot of progress in things like housing and airport infrastructure across the state and broadband technology, which we can get into. But I think we've also done a lot from a social infrastructure perspective as well. And maybe that's sort of a new bent. And I know that we'll talk about some of the research. I've had the great chance to kind of have a sneak peek at some of the research of Baton Global recently, but lifting up things and investing in things like childcare and mental health initiatives and affordable and workforce housing, sort of a new way of thinking about our social infrastructure fabric, which binds us all together as communities, as regions, and then ultimately a state. It's not to say that we don't have challenges in a lot of these areas or all of these areas, most of these areas, but I do think that we've had a really good head start when you look at the rest of the country, and I'm always optimistic about the future of our state, the future of our economy, and so look forward to diving into maybe some more of those topics here in a little bit.
Well, thank you for pointing out the concept of social infrastructure. When we launched the survey that you'll hear about with Baton Global, these elements like housing or childcare, not traditional infrastructure like roads, really have emerged as huge needs. So we've kind of used that nomenclature and it seems to be sticking. But I think increasingly what we're learning is how we live and the foundational things for how we live have as much impact and go together with things like how we communicate, how we travel, et cetera. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So let's go ahead and dive into opportunities and challenges. So let's start first with, what do you actually think are the biggest opportunities and the biggest challenges for infrastructure in Iowa from your vantage point representing these large employers?
Well, I think, again, starting off on a positive note, we've done so much in our state. And I look at broadband in particular. We've had, over the course of the last several years, 8 granting opportunities through the state. Most recently this summer, we've had 8 grants go across, all across the state of Iowa. There's been more than $790 million in broadband grant opportunities from the state level, from the federal level, and also private dollars coming into this gigantic pool. So we are making a tremendous amount of progress in the area of broadband technology. And so that still remains, I think, a focus point of the governor, rightfully so, the state legislature and other policymakers. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to continue that momentum, to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure our economy is ready to compete into the future. We talk a lot at the Business Council, and I know all of you do as well, about talking about a future-ready Iowa workforce. But we also have to talk about a future-ready Iowa economy, and it starts with broadband, the ability to communicate, the ability to engage with global partners. And if you don't have that broadband infrastructure, you're not at a competitive advantage, and we will be left behind. So we've done a lot in the area of broadband technology. A lot more obviously still to come, but we've gone in the right direction on that.
Excellent. So other opportunities and challenges around things like childcare or education, or what I would call the hard infrastructure around transportation and energy, anything really stand out to you?
I think the childcare piece continues to be something that we spend a lot of time on at the Business Council. We were a part of a large coalition for a long time, and one of the first business groups to really come out and support some of the different childcare initiatives. It's been a struggle, though, honestly. We as a state, in a good way, lead the country in both parents working outside the home, but that adds pressure on our childcare, our childcare infrastructure needs, and it's sort of a very difficult problem to address. On one hand, do we need like hard physical infrastructure assets, like actual buildings and brick and mortar childcare facilities? Okay, good, check, we can address that. We have that brick and mortar infrastructure, but now we don't have the workforce. So then how do we address that? And there are examples across this state where we have, great facilities and we have slots that have been created. Literally, the state of Iowa has created thousands of slots for childcare infrastructure. And I know Emily Schmitt will be coming up here in a moment, and she's done great work on the governor's child care task force. But some of those slots aren't even being able to be offered to the community because we don't have the workforce yet. And so the childcare issue from an infrastructure perspective is both a workforce issue, but then also a hard asset infrastructure issue. If we don't have the workforce, we can't offer the slots, and half of those buildings sometimes go unused. And that doesn't allow workers who are dependent upon childcare to engage in our workforce. So we've done a lot in the area of childcare. I think when you look at the long-term situation in our state, that continues to be something that we need to address, and the Iowa Business Council and our members continue to put a lot of thought and effort into that, and I know a lot of the folks around the Zoom screen today do as well. But that would be one area that I think continues to be challenging for us.
Can you talk a little too then about challenges and opportunities in terms of transportation? I know we'll hear from Brenda Neville from the Iowa Motor Truck Association later, but there's a big airport project going on here in central Iowa. There's a lot more to transportation than many people realize, with truck, with barge, with it's just pretty sweeping. So what are some of the places that you think, wow, here's ways we can compete, and other places where you think we've got big gaps?
Yeah, I think from an infrastructure perspective, the airports that you mentioned, such a critical tool for us to remain competitive from a global perspective. And I know that Des Moines has an amazing airport project underway right now. I think a $450 million airport terminal project that will hopefully be done by the fall of 2026. We've had great investment from the feds through the Infrastructure Act. I know that the state has come through on some grant opportunities. Cities have helped and contributed to that as well. That's really an economic driver for our region, but really the entire state. When you look at the Des Moines airport, it's really Iowa's airport. More than 3 million passengers coming from all over the state pass through the TSA checkpoints every single year. So that's really important to the state. Over in Eastern Iowa and Cedar Rapids, I was just in Cedar Rapids earlier this week. Their airport is concluding their 4th phase of their terminal project. So to provide great access and economic opportunity for those businesses as well, I think is really important. And airport infrastructure is just a gateway, obviously, to put it lightly, to the world, to the rest of the country. As we're bringing in business partners, it's just absolutely critical that we have those lanes open, quite literally. And then another thing that I would mention that I think that we can still do a lot of great work in, maybe in the spirit of maybe non-traditional infrastructure, are quality of life initiatives attached to infrastructure. So whether it's the Icon Water Trails project, whether it's projects around our state, from performing arts centers to community centers to other parks and recreational opportunities, these quality of life infrastructure projects are absolutely connected to the lifeblood of Iowa's communities, workforce, and then ultimately the economy. And that is so important as we continue to invest in areas to make sure that we have, like I said earlier, a future-ready Iowa workforce, but a future-ready economy to be able to compete globally as well.
Yeah, I think what we've seen with Envision Iowa is that these areas, people and culture, business, and infrastructure are all just so fluid. Everything really has to be working together if we truly want to have a strong economy and a strong state. So I think that's a great point. So now let's talk really specifically first about Iowa's largest companies. I'll get to the smaller ones as well, but since you are representing this group, how do you see them collectively or individually really approaching infrastructure issues that affect them?
Yeah, I think what's great about our members, and I know that small and medium-sized companies are doing this as well, but they are investing right along with their public partners in this whole opportunity. So whether it's MidAmerican Energy and Alliant Energy investing in cutting-edge technologies on our energy infrastructure, whether it's our Ruan transportation companies investing in the logistics aspect of the transportation pipeline from coast to coast, literally. You'll see Iowa Business Council members not just talking about it, but investing company resources in our overall infrastructure here in our state, which I think is so important. I mean, it shows that our members are committed to this economy. Our members are committed to Iowa. And I think it's really important that businesses and business leaders in our state continue to step up and support the economy in these areas. That's not always been what companies have done in the past, but I'm really proud of our members and proud of a lot of other Iowa companies that aren't necessarily our members that have done that. And I think that really speaks to the level and caliber of individuals that we have. Another great example, Susanna's Pella Corporation, obviously in Pella, they're in the business of making windows, right, and housing products, but they're also investing in planned communities in the Pella area in rural Iowa. They're investing in restaurants in their community to make sure that these quality of life initiatives are available to their workforce right there in their communities. And there are countless examples. A number of our other companies have invested in those quality of life initiatives, those childcare facilities, restaurants, other things around rural Iowa. Again, so invigorating to see Iowa's corporations invest in their communities, knowing that this is a long-term approach for sustainable economic growth in their communities and then in Iowa.
Excellent. Well, those are the large companies. So the big grocery store chains, the big convenience store chains, et cetera, utilities. But what do you think are some of the unique challenges for the smaller or privately held or family-owned companies here in Iowa in terms of any of these issues around infrastructure? Where are the pain points and where are the opportunities for them?
I think they're pretty similar to what we see among some of the larger employers of our state, our members. Right? It's access to energy infrastructure. It's access to housing infrastructure. When you get out into the rural communities, housing in particular begins to be an enormous pinch point. When you think about population growth strategies, when you think about economic development, we have about a 50,000 housing shortage here in our state, or will have a housing shortage in our state here soon, as people are reluctant to move for obvious reasons, impacting the economy. But that just means that our housing infrastructure continues to age. I was looking at some statistics over the weekend and saw that more than 40% of Iowa's housing stock was pre-1950. And that's great that we've been able to maintain a lot of those homes, but that also means that we have an aging housing infrastructure situation in our state. And with rates in the economy the way that it is right now, there's really not a lot of applications for mortgages, construction loans, and other things. And so we have to think creatively on how we can impact our housing infrastructure. And that's really where I think small and medium-sized companies can get involved in their communities, whether it's in a large urban setting like Des Moines or Cedar Rapids or the Quad Cities, or in a rural setting as well. Those strategic public-private partnerships are what drive economic innovation and overall strategy in these communities. And that would be a great place to start.
Excellent. Well, then last question. Are there any particular areas of progress or great stories or examples around infrastructure that you would like to highlight or share?
Well, I mentioned a few already. I just think it's tremendous what Iowa's been able to do from a broadband standpoint. Literally almost $1 billion of investments so far, and that's going to continue to be an outflow. I think the things that we've seen with respect to childcare, while that's still a problem, we're addressing it head on, trying to think creatively on what those solutions, those business-led solutions might be. And I know that we'll talk more about energy infrastructure here in a little bit, but the fact that we've got great energy companies in this state, and MidAmerica in particular, supporting not only the energy ecosystem, but supporting the tens of thousands of jobs around the state that go into providing those renewable energy opportunities and those traditional energy opportunities is really amazing. And the fact that we're able to keep energy rates low in this state puts us at a tremendous competitive advantage when we're talking about expanding new businesses, expanding existing businesses, whether that's small, medium, or large companies. We're also trying to lure in new businesses from outside of Iowa. When they look at our ability to keep rates low, stable, and predictable, if you can provide certainty to companies, that's an amazing thing. And energy, keeping those energy costs efficiently sound, I think, is really, really important. And our power companies have done a terrific job on that.
Well, excellent. I'm sure we'll hear more examples around energy, transportation, economic development in general a little bit later. So thank you for kicking us off and kind of laying the issues out there for us, Joe. Always a pleasure to see you. And so, Chris, I'm going to hand it back to you now.
All right. Thank you again, Joe. You helped teed us up very nicely for our panel discussion today. Hit on a couple of the themes that I know we're going to dive a little bit deeper into. And we've got a great group of panelists for you all to hear from now. Next, With us today, we have Kathryn Kunert. She's the Vice President of Economic Connections and Integration at MidAmerican Energy. In that role, Kathryn leads a team dedicated to serving communities and businesses across Iowa with project management, expansion, retention, and strategic planning, site selection, and more. She's also served in leadership positions on numerous local, regional, and state economic development boards and commissions. Also joining us today is Brenda Neville. She's the president and CEO of the Iowa Motor Truck Association. For more than 36 years, Brenda has represented Iowa's trucking industry. Since joining the association in 1987, Brenda has served in a variety of roles and was named president and CEO in 2008. In addition, Brenda is active in many organizations and served on numerous professional boards on both the state and national level. Returning, she's been a part of our think tank series in the past. We decided we needed to bring her back again. Emily Schmitt, she's the Chief Administrative Officer at Sukup Manufacturing. Emily is the third generation of family active in Sukup Manufacturing, the largest family-owned full-line grain drying and storage equipment manufacturer in the country, which is based in Sheffield, Iowa. She serves as general counsel for the company, which employs more than 600 employees. And she also serves on numerous boards of directors at the local and state level. She and her husband reside in Clear Lake. And lastly, we have Travis Toliver. He's the executive director of the Waverly Chamber of Commerce. He's currently in his 9th year as executive director, and Travis works to help better the business community in Waverly, the state of Iowa, and the upper Midwest. He proudly serves on a number of boards of directors and is a past board member of the Iowa Association of Chambers of Commerce. In 2021, he was appointed by Governor Kim Reynolds to her Empower Rural Iowa Initiative Grow Task Force, which focuses on addressing the recruitment and retention of emerging leaders in rural communities. He and his family live in Waverly, and on a side note, you'll see his nice microphone that he's got with us here today. He's also an accomplished voiceover artist, MC, narrator, and opera musical theater performer. So maybe he'll be doing some of our moderation here in the future. As you can see, we've got a great mix of experts, industries, and geographies, and of course, some great talent here for you to learn from today. So we're going to go ahead and start it out. And Kathryn, I'm going to go ahead and start with you first. Tell us just a little bit about your organization, but then tell us about maybe what the biggest opportunities and challenges that you're seeing as it relates to infrastructure. Oh, and you are on mute. We'll get you unmuted there. There you go.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you so much to the Business Record for having me. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this conversation. And I feel like we could just keep Joe Murphy on in this role. And he's done a great job and is a huge advocate, obviously, for our entire state, but also for his partners that he so brilliantly can represent for all of us. So pleased to be a part of that organization as well. So to start with, just for those of you who don't know, MidAmerican Energy Company is part of the Berkshire Hathaway Energy Company family. We are in 4 states. We're a natural gas and electric provider. We serve more than 780,000 natural gas customers and more than 800,000 electric customers in those 4 states, which represents 420 communities plus that we serve across those 4 states with gas and electric service. And at MidAmerican Energy, obviously, we like to say we're more than just your utility provider. We're your partner, and obsessively, relentlessly at your service is just not a tagline. It's actually in our DNA. And I think some of the work that we've been able to do to be leaders to support our customers and the growth of our states that we serve is exceptional. And I think some of the opportunities that we see, both are challenges and opportunities. The policy that Iowa in particular has had over the last 20 years has really allowed to put Iowa on the map in the fact that, you know, we look forward and we think in advance. And that has really allowed for us to be a leader in renewable energy. And when we talk, MidAmerican is on its destination net zero, and that's in order to help people meet and our customers meet their sustainability goals, which are so incredibly important. But I want to back up a little bit from that, because at MidAmerican, we really think through that 3-legged stool. We know the criticality of energy is to the business today, more now than ever. Our customers expect and deserve that the affordable, the reliable, and now it's the renewable. So you manage that three-legged stool equally. And we have to ensure that we maintain that three-legged stool for everybody. If one of those legs is out of whack, then the ability for us to maintain that competitive and economic advantage is put at risk. And we know that the role that MidAmerican and all utilities play in economic development is significant. And now with the energy transition, people are thinking about their energy much differently than they did before. And so the business attraction that we've done, the business expansion that we've done really energy plays a huge role in that. And there's a reason why we have some of those customers that we have here from the large tech. The manufacturing just keeps growing. We have a long tradition of manufacturing here in our state, and the energy needs continue to grow. And because of the energy policy, we've been able to get out in front of it. And with MidAmerican, you know, I think many of you know this, we are a leader in renewable energy, and we are able through our Green Advantage program to provide our Iowa customers with at the 21 rate, we are at 92.9. We're getting ready to file our 2022 number with the Iowa Utilities Board. But with that, they're able to claim on their behalf that renewable energy as theirs through our Green Advantage program. That is a one-of-a-kind program in our state that MidAmerican provides to our Iowa customers. It puts us on the map. It's a differentiator. So if you think about the policy and getting in front of it, that creates leadership that we've had over 20 years. We need to continue to maintain that leadership and think about the policies that are required to maintain Iowa's leadership position. So whether it's from continuing to build more renewables, manage our transmission in order to safely and reliably and affordably get the energy to our customers, it's the bigger picture, and you can't just separate out any parts or pieces of that. So we think about the holistic approach of energy today, I think differently because people are using it differently, but we can also help them meet their sustainability goals to ensure that we're helping them with their energy needs while they're able to work on their priorities.
Thanks, Kathryn. Brenda, I'm gonna go to you next.
Well, thank you. Great to be with all of these great panelists and excited to hear the discussion. The Iowa Motor Truck Association has been around since 1942, and we have 400 trucking companies that belong to our association. And a lot of our members are the truckload carriers that go all over the nation, into Canada, into Mexico. And to put that in perspective, there's 24,000 trucking companies in the state of Iowa, and there's 400 of them that belong to our association. So either we're not doing a very good job recruiting members, or we have, you know, lots of potential members, but we do have, like I said, all the large truckload carriers, and there are a lot of small trucking operations that are very important, most of them tied to the agricultural segment, that we also represent through our policy and advocacy effort. They just may not be a member of our association. We just finished a conference the last 2 days, and there was probably 10 to 15 people from out of the state that were part of the program that we put on. And all of them have always said that Iowa is a huge trucking company. 1 in 13 people get a paycheck from the trucking industry in this state. We're a big employer, and really, you know, are critically important to all of us having a great quality of life, right? Because of the truck's delivery system, rarely or ever will we ever find an empty shelf in the grocery store. There's always going to be fuel for you to when you go to a gas station. So trucking really is essential and impacts all of you in a big way every single day. So we're very proud of you know, being such an important part of Iowa's economy. Obstacles and challenges, similar to what, you know, Kathryn said, and I think Susanna, you pointed this out earlier too. While we are always looking at what's going on with infrastructure, with road and bridges, I would also say our delivery partners, rail, intermodal, barges, airports, warehousing, that's all a big picture that's very important to trucking, right? We really are very tied into that. And manufacturing, we want more manufacturing. We want a strong economy in the state of Iowa. We want all these things to thrive, because if they're thriving, guess what? Trucks are going to have to be moving their products. So it is a bigger picture. It is a much bigger approach that we take to a lot of our advocacy efforts and what we are looking at now. Energy is very important to us right now too. We have valuable partners in MidAmerica and the energy companies, because obviously electric vehicles and trucks is something that's always at the forefront and will continue to be an important topic for our industry to weigh in on and navigate. So obviously what's going on with utilities and energy is extremely important to us too. So another challenge that we're facing, like everybody else, which really I think is important to remember, a lot of people just associate the trucking industry with truck drivers, and our companies are made up of all sorts of other important jobs. So workforce is an issue that we're challenged with, just like everybody else, trying to attract good people to our industry. A lot of our companies are in rural Iowa. So as we've been doing listening sessions around the state over the last couple of years, it's been interesting that all of a sudden our folks are talking about housing, childcare, and what's going on in their communities, because they are trying to attract good people into their companies. Again, not just as truck drivers, they're very important, but there's a plethora of jobs available within a trucking company, from operations to sales to accounting. And our CEOs want to attract people into those jobs. And sometimes it's difficult because some of these other essential parts of a community aren't quite where they need to be. So that's a big approach of a lot of things we're doing, but hopefully that sets the stage for what's going on in the trucking industry.
Thanks, Brenda. Appreciate it. Travis, we'll go to you next.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm humbled to be on this panel with these great women. They really represent great leadership here in Iowa, and so thank you for having me. The Waverly Chamber of Commerce has been around since 1937, and we serve an array of the business community here in Waverly and Northeast Iowa. We have also the Main Street program for our community, and we also do tourism efforts on behalf of the city. Our nearly 300 businesses that are members of our organization range anywhere from mom and pop shops to huge manufacturers and insurance companies. And we're fortunate to be home of Wartburg College, which is a great 4-year liberal arts higher education institution here, and also to the home of Nestle, which makes our town smell good, which we're very thankful for. Each and every day. It smells like chocolate, smells like vanilla. You pick it and it's wonderful to smell. When we talk about the challenges in infrastructure, I couldn't agree more with a lot of what Joe said. Affordable housing is certainly a challenge in our community, as well as others like ours throughout the state, and childcare as well. To cite an example, our childcare center here in Waverly just completed a 3-year campaign to double their capacity. And had probably about 100 families on a wait list. But when that facility is completed and they move into that, and we are able to add those families to that new facility, we're probably still going to have about another 100 on the wait list already after that. And so the thing that's preventing our child care center right now from being able to fill those new classrooms that they're building is staffing. And so then that's the third thing right there is, skilled workforce, and being able to find those folks who are able to fill those staffing needs in our community. I hear it from our small businesses as well as our large businesses. And I think those three components are really the linchpins to economic development happening in most communities. Without childcare, people don't want to move to a community without good housing, without proper education, without jobs. And so everything is a trickle effect, and it really all coincides together, kind of as Susanna was saying, that all that needs to be happening together. And so finding innovative ways to be able to do that, working with resource partners like the other panelists here on the discussion, and certainly through other larger communities. I think we all just need to come together and really find a way to creatively solve these challenges. But we're on our way of doing it, and I'm really excited about that.
Thank you, Travis. You teed up Emily probably pretty nicely, I'm guessing. So Emily, you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing?
Of course. So I am Emily Schmitt, Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel of Sukup Manufacturing. As Chris said, we employ 600 employees in the small town of Sheffield that has 1,200. We actually have expanded regionally. We have locations in Hampton, Manly, and then we just went into Clear Lake, and that has really been working well. But as this panel has been talking about, each of the communities as we expand, need to have the infrastructure there. And I really liked how Joe phrased it for the future ready Iowa economy, because we keep on having the traditional type of viewpoints of what infrastructure is. Everybody thinks of transportation, roads, utilities, but that social infrastructure is just as, and if not more important nowadays, and that we have to really take time and be intentional on that. And so I love the future ready Iowa economy, because in order to change perception, you have to change the behavior too. So let's change the perception. Let's get that going. And, you know, childcare is definitely a passion of mine, which came up earlier, but it's something that through the pandemic, we already had an issue before the pandemic. A third of childcare centers in Iowa closed, not just, and that was before the pandemic. And then many women left the workforce due to childcare issues during the pandemic. So we just keep seeing it worsen. So we really need to figure out, what are we going to do about it? Because we keep talking about it. And I remember last year we were at this session as well. And there's so many people that want to do something. And you know, when we talk about challenges, I'm here in DC right now. And I can tell you that is one of the biggest challenges. I'm in the Senate building. The sentiment is clear. If we're going to go and change or improve things, it's not going to be in DC. It's not going to be at a Capitol. It's going to be at our businesses and our communities. So we need to work together, be partners. And at Sukup, we're very fortunate to be able to do that, where we can make a decision to invest the money like we did on our on-site clinic 5 years ago. Even though there was a clinic in Sheffield operated by Mercy, just putting it on site has been a game changer. People clock in, clock out, got seen in 15 minutes and can make up their time, and they don't have to take up any of their time. So we're doing the same thing with childcare. So we were able to apply, and we received a $1.2 million matching grant from the state. And we're going to be building a childcare center, and we already have 38 on the wait list, and we haven't broken ground yet. But we do that next fall is when it's going to open. But that's something that, like, how can we approach it in a way that's more innovative? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, okay, the hours that we start at 6 a.m. is outside of the normal working hours. So we're going to look and structure it so that, okay, let's say 6 to 8 a.m. We're going to pay overtime rates to the childcare center to help fund for those workers an overtime rate, because right now we can't keep a cyclical system going where we're paying them low wages, then they are eligible to send their kids to the childcare center with a discounted rate. And we're just creating the cycle to continue. So we as employers and at chambers, we need to think, how can we fix and how do we stop the crazy cycle? So when we think of it as, okay, our overtime, we work a 45-hour scheduled shift week. So how does that impact childcare? So we're trying to be very intentional of, what are the decisions that we make that affect it, and how can we fund and support it? So that way we're trying to create a playbook to show to other companies, like, hey, think about what decisions you make for your business and support the childcare center in that way. So then it's meaningful, and it's much easier to get people to write checks when you say, hey, if you're starting at 5 a.m., those people are waking up and trying to take care of your kids too at 5 a.m. I don't know which one you'd rather do. But so making it intentional is going to be better, because we need to modernize it, and we have to work to hire, pay, and retain the staff better. And, you know, we have our group of engineers that meet in the lunchroom. And so Amy Fleming, who we just got on board last year, I said, okay, I want you to go to the engineer table on the lunchroom and find out the best innovative drop-off pickup method we can to really even just efficiency increase it there. But also the state also through the Child Care Task Force report implemented a shared services agreement and approach. So I'm going to be pasting some links in the chat that I really want everybody to go to, because if you want to help solve and be a problem solver of childcare, you need to read these, and you need to read the report. And I think I said it last year of, if you don't read the report, then you really don't want to help change childcare. It's that simple. So read the report. I'll put it in here, because the other thing that we need to do is we need to reach out to the childcare centers ourselves. We need to talk to them and help them understand some of the things that in business it would help them. So for instance, the state is doing a shared services agreement. So it is saying, hey, we will contract and make the economies of scale so that you can get something cheaper. So they can take up payroll, they can take up background checks, and possibly even just the child care management system. And that way everybody's working together. And if everybody does that, we can automatically see, like we do in our supply chains, maybe linking different pools of potential people to fill in at childcare centers when someone is out. Because if we're all working on the same data management system, we can leverage that data for better decisions moving forward. So I think we need to be, you know, just like Joe said too, the public-private partnerships, we can't be on the sidelines. We need to be an active coach. We need to be there linking the players together, helping make the play successful. And that's the only way it's going to be, because like I said, in DC, there's nothing for us right now but challenges. And it's always going to be kicked down the road because we have a government shutdown coming and they can't even get the farm bill passed. So there's nothing that's coming on that. But so I'm going to put these in the chat. If anybody has a question, reach out. I'm also on Twitter. But those are the biggest opportunities, I think, and the biggest challenges that I see.
Well, Emily, picking up kids from daycare, make sure that all their paintings are gathered together, all their shoes, coats, hats, boots,
right? Shoes
all not just scattered
right?
across the room. That's the number
Shoes
one.
on.
Yes. I'm going to ask you one follow-up. You talked a little bit about, you know, childcare, the solutions and things that are being put in place or that are being worked towards. Those aren't necessarily overnight. There's going to be immediate difference. Even you all are making this investment, and it's going to take a while for that investment to be felt. And so I'm curious if you could maybe point to some of the other wins in that space or things that might lead to some progress in the future, and how we think about that as we're going through that time where we're putting things in place, but we're not necessarily realizing that yet.
Yeah, we've been very flexible with our people who are experiencing childcare issues. So number one, as a business member, we are trying to be flexible with schedules, understanding what the schedules are at the childcare center. So just reaching out to them and saying, hey, what do you need? What are your challenges for schedules? What's easy? Because just knowing those and having that relationship really helps. And then we also think about it as, okay, they don't have healthcare a lot of times at these childcare centers, but we offer it obviously. So we did a survey to our own employees and said, hey, do you know anybody, or is your spouse interested? And we got like 3 or 4 people saying that they would be interested, or they had a family member. So just understanding they're already on our healthcare, so they don't need to go to an employer to get healthcare. And then in the meantime, there's some changes that I'd like to see, which I was going to mention later, would be like supporting them as small businesses. So helping them link to the small businesses resources, because I think they oftentimes get lost on that. So just helping connect them with small business resources as well.
Travis, I'm going to go to you next, and we're going to go around the horn on this one too, but I'm wondering if you could highlight maybe some ways that your community has been innovating to try to respond to some of the infrastructure challenges.
Yeah, one way that Waverly has done this, and Joe kind of tapped on it earlier, is with broadband. Our local telecom provider, Waverly Utilities, was forward thinking enough a few years ago to start thinking about fiber and high-speed internet and really getting that built out into our community. And I'm happy to say that we're now in probably year 3 or 4 of having a fully built out fiber optic community. And in fact, Waverly was actually one of the first gigabyte cities in Iowa due to that forward-thinking infrastructure planning. And so not only does that help with businesses and all of our resources online that businesses rely on so much now, but also it's an attractor to people wanting to move to our community. It also enhances quality of life for sure. But the real significant factor is that it also attracts those folks that can now work remotely after the pandemic, and they're able to live anywhere in the country that they want to. And so then they look for, obviously, the first thing would be housing, high-speed internet, and then quality of life. And making sure that those 3 components are set is a huge attractor for any community looking to recruit those folks who are able to work remotely. And so really proud of our utility company for having that forward thinking. They're now starting to work on a solar array to help offset some energy costs. But that kind of initiative, which our community has actually been known for, really helps to provide the attraction that we need to have future residents here in Waverly.
Thanks, Travis. Brenda, what are some ways that you've seen the community respond in an innovative way to some of the challenges?
Well, I'm going to use the example of some of our larger trucking companies. And interestingly, Emily, a lot of them have had childcare discussions. And so your remarks were right on as far as some of the things that they have found out. At the end of the day, our trucking company owners are trying to figure out a way to attract people. And a lot of our trucking companies, especially in the rural area, they are the biggest employer. And so they know it's incumbent on them to be the leaders of those communities. And they want to make them quality places for people to come back and work and live. And so there is a lot of those discussions going on. Again, it's been pretty remarkable having trucking company CEOs sitting around the table and talking about things other than moving that load from point A to point B, or what's going on with the trucks. It's really becoming more about how do we attract people to our industry. And that's where I thought it was interesting too, when Joe said the social infrastructure, the childcare, mental health, having access to mental health services is extremely important. That's part of the wellness, especially when you think of, the demographic of everybody in the trucking industry. There are more and more trucking companies that are looking at ways to enhance how they can serve the drivers and their employees, and mental health and amazing, like you said, childcare is becoming more of a topic. So what I'm seeing the trucking industry lean into a lot that they haven't done in even 5 years ago is taking on these kind of issues, because they understand that's how they're going to get workforce. That's how they're going to get people into their communities. And just the fact that they're having these conversations, to me, is progress in the trucking industry. We didn't have those conversations 5 years ago, but because we're fighting for the same employees all of you are having, we realize that as an industry that we need to step up and start having those conversations. So to me, that's what I'm seeing to be a pretty big shift in the industry from my perspective.
Kathryn, how about you?
So I'm going to talk a little bit still more about energy, if you don't mind, Chris, on the fact that, we recognize that we are, in this energy transition phase where we're transitioning more to the renewables, while still thinking about the all above approach, recognizing that you still need base load generation to support manufacturing and our tech customers and residential and businesses. So as we think about that transition and the all above approach, and recognizing that we have to work in our communities to ensure that, we're successfully being able to build the generation and the transmission that is required to serve our customers. So if you think about that, 20 years ago, the opposition to building generation was zero. And so, we had the ability to go in, work with our landowners, work with our policymakers, and get generation built. It's still the way we work today. We still work with landowners one-on-one. We do not use eminent domain. We only work with landowners. We have private easements that support our generation. However, and we're, like I said, we're, in 33 counties. We've got more than 3,400 wind turbines providing, 7,400 plus megawatts of energy, while maintaining that three-legged stool. We have the 5th lowest rates in the country. So with that, when you throw in our renewable energy at the highest level that anybody can get at no additional net cost, just by being in our service territory, you're getting that renewable energy, helps to drive the economy. It helps our communities when they're trying to do, whether they're trying to expand a business, they're trying to attract a business, or they're thinking about how do they make their community more competitive or more friendly. They can think about how their energy is being delivered with that affordable, reliable, and renewable energy. And I think when we think about energy in a different way as the true partner, in addition to just delivering the kWh or the therm, then that's when we really start to make a difference. And I think I'm most proud about MidAmerican doing that. So that's why we, lean into this partnership with our customers and with our communities, with folks like Travis who run chambers, our economic development directors, et cetera. And then we are also able to invest in our communities through energy, but through our corporate citizenship work as well.
Well, we're just about at the end of our time for our panel discussion today. And so I want to give you each a chance to give a final closing thought. And perhaps if you could put your thought towards something you hope that our state is focusing on, or businesses could be focusing on as it relates to infrastructure as we go forward. And Travis, I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Chris, for the opportunity to be on the panel. A final thought would just probably be the hope that the state is really working on, we're all actively working on these infrastructure components, and we've talked a lot about them. And Joe did a great job of kind of summarizing everything for what all of us on the panel have talked about. But I think the final thought here would be just, let's find a way to tell that story now. Let's let people know that Iowa has these great things, and so we're able to attract the workforce that we need, able to attract businesses that are looking forward to expand or to broaden their horizons, especially in the Midwest region. Is there creative ways that we can, beyond the normal media buys, that we can tell our story as a state, to be able to say, Iowa, yes, we're a flyover state, but we've got a lot happening down here, and once you come see it and check it out and try to thrive your business here. I think that's really the key component. Once we can get all that stuff working together and we can tell our story, the sky's the limit as far as how Iowa can prosper and grow.
All right, Brenda.
Well, a final thought I have to leave with you, of course, is if you got it, the truck brought it. But I would also, I would say we all have to remember to keep having these conversations. It's incumbent that we as leading industries continue to support, pro-business, pro-trucking, of course, from my perspective, agenda, because if the economy is good in Iowa, we're all going to benefit from it. And I think it's important as business leaders, like I said, leading industries, that we have these discussions that maybe aren't typical to what we're having discussions on, right? From my vantage point, like I said, I'm very proud of the trucking industry for the role they play. And for years, we are always been invested in the roads. We need good roads, we need good bridges. And that was really a lot of our infrastructure discussions for so long. To see that shift, and it was forced on us, obviously, because of the pandemic, the workforce changes and what have you, to see that shift in the discussion, at least in the trucking industry, is exciting for me. I think it speaks highly of the up and coming leaders we have in this industry that are challenging us to look beyond just moving a product from point A to point B. Partnerships are important. We work very closely with all of our delivery partners. So I just think leaning into this and continue to have these discussions and make sure that, we all can be focused on the things that are going to keep making this state a great state to live and work in.
Great. Kathryn.
Well, I got to double down on what Brenda said. If it's on a truck, there was probably energy that was used to make the product that's on that truck.
There you go, probably.
However, in all seriousness, but obviously Brenda and I work very closely together. I want to leave this thought with, let's be for something. It's so easy to be against something. That's hitting the easy button, in my opinion. And it's much harder to be for something. It's much harder to lead for something and be that champion for something. I think that is a differentiator, though, for Iowa and for this region, is that we look for those things to solve together and to be for something. And I think that's what makes winners and leaders successful, is they figured out how to be for something and to change the narrative. And now don't find that one thing that's going to rile somebody up, but find what that consensus is, because typically around an issue, there's more consensus than not. And I think that if we promote the champions and we promote the something to be for something, we're going to continue to be successful in our state.
Thanks, Kathryn. And Emily, it looks like you've had a scene change over at the Capitol. So we'll
yes, everything changes and nothing is what it was before. So quick scene change. Final points. Think of what you can do to help support small businesses and apply it to childcare. One of the big things that I'm trying to get communications on right now is how can we have chambers adopts healthcare plans that their members can be a part of. Because if we can get we have to figure out worker benefits for small businesses to thrive. We don't want everybody leaving just to go to a big company or just because of healthcare. And we already have healthcare on the markets that was supposed to solve it. But obviously, again, government doesn't solve it all the way. So we need to figure out, apply it to chambers. We're getting some people together. Urbandale has a 401k that they did at their chamber level. And then also as a chamber, maybe you have a free, if you're a registered childcare, maybe you can be a member for free or something like that, because this is such vital to every business. What can you do in your business to help others? So I'd really push for discussion to start at that chamber level to bring those healthcare plans. And it can be a different tiers of membership. You have to pay more for it, great. But we've seen that just the open market for healthcare has not been affordable. So how can we be more innovative? And it's just going to help the workforce, for the restaurants, for the childcare centers, everything that we need. And it's interesting because everybody says, that's a great idea. And for like 2 years, I still haven't gotten it done. So it's on my mission. So if anybody can help with that, we have some more discussions coming, but final thought there.
All right. Thank you all to each of our panelists. We appreciate you being here today to help us learn a little bit more about what's going on and maybe with some areas that we still have some work to do in.